calls for Pakistan to be banned from the Cricket World Cup for blasphemy laws. Churches damaged and mass cancelled in Niger. And Adventism celebrates 100 years on the Kokoda track.
This is InFocus Christian News and Current Affairs.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, stay on this channel. We've got a show of biblical proportion for you today. But first, we welcome to the studio Sibel. How are you, Sibel?
Good, thanks, Jared. How are you? I'm
fantastic, and I'm very excited. Today, Noah is going to visit. Well, actually, Noel. But he's also built an ark, Sibel, and it could be in the studio. We're going to try and fit it in.
Sounds great. I've actually met Noel and talked with him extensively about the ark. It's all very interesting.
All the things you never thought you needed to know about the ark. Well, I'm looking forward to it. Kent has a great chat with Noel. But first, the news.
Thanks, Jared. The Australian Christian Lobby has responded to Pakistan's blasphemy laws by calling for their national cricket team to be banned from the upcoming World Cup. According to the US Commission on International Religious Freedom, 16 Pakistanis are currently on death row for blasphemy. Among them is Christian woman Asia Bibi, who was sentenced to death in 2010 for allegedly making derogatory comments about Muhammad. The Australian Christian Lobby's Lyle Shelton says banning Pakistan from the World Cup has the potential to create positive change in religious freedom in the country.
We've stopped short of calling for a ban at this stage, but we do note that a ban on sport was very effective for South Africa in reintegrating it in the international community. But what we do say is that the Pakistani government should explain why it should not be banned from world sport while it is killing people such as Asia Bibi for blasphemy.
The Catholic Church in Niger suspended all masses and activities in the wake of Charlie Hebdo riots, saying it is just too dangerous at this stage to continue. Archbishop Michel Katetegui of Niamey told Vatican Radio that Christians in Niger are in a state of shock and that he doesn't understand why Christians are being targeted by the protesters, though he suspects that those perpetrating the violence are being manipulated from abroad. According to World Mission Monitor, more than 70 churches have been damaged and at least 10 people have been killed in the violence, while security forces did little to stop the carnage. Niger's president, Mahamadou Issoufou, condemns the attacks and said that the attackers were people who did not understand anything about Islam. Australians' plain packaged tobacco laws are having the desired effect, with the vast majority of smokers admitting they don't like the look of their ugly cigarette packs. News.com.au reports that 8 out of 10 smokers are turned off by the graphic health warnings featured on the packs. According to the British Medical Journal, the number of users worried about their smoking has also doubled in the past 2 years since the plain packs were introduced. A recent study by the Cancer Institute also shows a 78% increase in calls to quit line since the launch of the plain packaging laws in December 2012.
Look, when I started running stop smoking programs back in the early 70s, I wouldn't have dreamt that we could have made such progress. A whole lot of little things have added to it. The tax on cigarettes, the health warnings on cigarette packs, the plain paper packaging has all contributed to outstanding results in this part of the world. Recently I travelled in Asia, Europe, and it comes back to you again just how many people are smoking. So we're delighted with the progress that's being made.
United States President Barack Obama has met the wife of jailed American Iranian pastor Saeed Abedini and assured her that his freedom is a top priority. The 10-minute visit occurred after more than 100,000 people signed a petition asking the president to meet Naghmeh while he was in her hometown of Boise, Idaho. According to the American Center for Law and Justice, who sponsored the petition, the meeting sends a strong message to Iran, who imprisoned Pastor Abedini in 2012. But it was 6-year-old Jacob's question to the president that may have really tugged his heartstrings. Jacob asked, "Mr. President, can you please bring Daddy home for my birthday?" which is March 17th. The president said he will try very hard. More than 5,000 campers have joined 700 local residents in the village of Efoghi along the Kokoda track to celebrate 100 years of Seventh-day Adventism in the region. For 12 days, the celebrants enjoyed programs on the theme of Tracking to Gloryland. 5 flame runners, grandsons of the original pioneer missionaries, spent 3 days carrying torches from the south end of the track to Efogee. Local politicians and church dignitaries also attended the celebrations. By the Second World War, the Christian message had transformed the people living along the track. Most of the villages along the southern end of the track are majority Adventist. At least 2 people were killed and 1,000 injured during the annual parade of the Black Nazarene through the streets of Manila on January 9th. According to the Christian Post, one man is believed to have been crushed by the 5 million strong crowd attempting to touch the life-size statue of Jesus, which many of the local Catholics believe has the power to perform miracles. A volunteer accompanying the statue also died of a heart attack. The procession of the Black Nazarene was held in the lead-up to Pope Francis's 5-day visit to the Philippines. A mass service in Manila saw millions of people brave torrential rain to catch a glimpse of the Pope. Adventist youth in the US have taken door-knocking to a whole new level, visiting more than 100,000 homes across the city of Phoenix in an effort to share Jesus. The initiative was part of a 5-day conference of GYC, or Generation Youth Christ. In addition to making house-to-house contacts, the group of mainly teenagers and college-age Adventists also visited a number of hospitals and nursing homes. The theme for the 12th annual GYC event was At the Cross. During the conference, GYC President Natasha Neblett reminded attendees that being a Christian means living a life that rattles the world. 2014 was a special year for the Seventh-day Adventist Church in Vanuatu, with more than 3,300 committing their lives to Christ through baptism. Last year's total was more than 5 times the number of annual baptisms seen in previous years. In December, 543 people were baptized following a citywide evangelistic series in Port Vila. The campaign attracted crowds of more than 6,000 people on a nightly basis, with thousands more across the island nation watching the program live on the internet. Among those baptized on the final weekend of the series were politicians, prisoners, and a 106-year-old woman. That's the news for this week. Jared?
Thanks, Sibel. Stay tuned. Right after the break, we get a sneak peek into what Noah's Ark would have really looked like. You don't want to miss it.
Discover some of these artists from Salter Music. Anna Weatherup.
Oh, people get ready for the train to Jordan.
Castles in Air.
Like watchmen wait for the morning light.
Eric and Monique.
You alone are my strength, my refuge.
Sapphire.
His love reached the bottom of the ocean.
No matter what shade of musical taste you have, you might just find something that sings to you. It's all waiting to be discovered at saltermusic.com. Fresh and exciting original Christian music from Salter Music.
Signs of the Times, a magazine for a world on the brink. And this month in Signs, can you believe in a God that science cannot prove exists? Eat like a caveman or quit sugar. We review the latest diet trends, 50 Shades of Grey. First the novel, now the movie. And we answer life's big question, why are we here? All in this month's Signs of the Times. Subscribe to Signs today and change your life.
Well, you know what they say about men and their sheds. I've got a Noel Deed here today who's really sort of gone a bit far, Noel. But this hobby of yours, boat building, has really turned into a ministry, and that's really what I want to talk about. Hey, thanks for coming in.
Thanks, Kent, for the invitation.
So, for how long have you been into model boats?
Around about age 18, so it's a long time.
Oh, wow.
Goes back to the very first one.
Yeah. Wow, and that's incredible. And I guess all shapes and sizes of boats. Didn't you start off with a destroyer or something when you were
That's
when you
right.
were quite young?
What I call the jam tin special, about 1 metre long.
Yeah.
I cut these tins out, soldered them together, put a steam engine in it, out onto the river, turned the rudder, and it came
Big
back.
circle. So
That's right.
you're always pretty ambitious when it came to model boats by the sound of it.
Absolutely.
Wow, that's incredible. And here we have, and also a cross-section here, we have Noah's Ark. Goodness, how long, let's just look at this model for starters. How long did it take you to make this? And where did you get the gopher wood, is what I want to know.
That model took almost 2 years
Wow.
to build. But before that, research as to the shape, timber and so forth.
Yes.
A lot of work, but I was so interested that I just worked and worked.
And the fascinating thing for me is that inside you've gone to a lot of effort here for the detail inside with all these decks and compartments, and goodness, there's even tiny little animals in here to scale, or maybe they're just on my side here. I'll turn it around.
Yes, they are to scale pretty well.
So what is the scale?
The scale of the model is 1 to 85.
Okay.
The animal's 1 to 87, so it's a pretty good match.
Pretty good match. Okay. So you read Genesis, and you looked at the dimensions, and you figured out the cubits and all, and voila, is that the process?
Pretty well. Genesis 6 gives the length, the breadth and the height in cubits. And if we put that into metric, 137 metres by 14 metres by 23.
Okay. Wow, so it's pretty hefty. The thing, I mean, you did this, I guess, essentially for fun at the beginning, but this has turned into a ministry. Can you tell us how that's happened?
It has, in fact. Actually, I was challenged by a lady in our church, can you build a scale model? And after some thought and investigation, I thought, yes, I'd love to do that. And I was really seeking to prove to myself by doing a scale one that it would look like a real ship. And that's exactly what I did. When I finished that, I then turned to the cross-section, which is a different scale again, because I thought if people wanted to see it, that tells them what it's like as a boat. This shows what it's like on the inside.
Gives you an idea of the functionality, because of course a lot of us are used to sort of this sort of image when we think of Noah's Ark. You know, the children's book version with the giraffe with its head sort of poking out the window and that sort of thing. And it's really hard to believe that a boat like that could, deal with floodwaters and could fit all their animals in. But looking at this, suddenly it seems a lot more believable. Is that the reaction you get from people who say this does look like a real ship?
That is the reaction. In fact, the first time I exhibited this at a models exhibition, I was actually quite stunned at the reaction of the people. Because you imagine that boat being amongst 300 other models of scale ships. People coming along and looking at ship after ship, and then they come to this one, and the typical reaction was oh, is that Noah's Ark? Yes, that's Noah's Ark. But that looks like a real ship.
Giving away that they actually have never really considered it to be a real ship or a real story.
Why did you think it was otherwise? And, the typical cartoon version.
And then the conversation starts.
And then I'm able to come right through and say, well, the dimensions of this are given in the Bible, or the proportions.
Yes.
Is that right? Genesis 6. And at the end of the conversation, they say, I'm going to go home and read that in my Bible.
Well, I mean, people must have some practical questions. I mean, looking at it now, I'm a bit of a multi-hull man, catamarans and trimarans, so I look at a mono-hull suspiciously at the best of times, but I look at this and I think, well, it looks like it could flip pretty easy if a wave hit it broadside. Wouldn't it sort of be all over for Noah and his animals?
Well, that's what you may think, but there have been at least 2 naval experts in the last 20 years who have examined those proportions computer modelling, test tanks with various other shapes, and they have determined that as a drifting ship in the storm conditions that it would have gone through would have been very stable. It would have handled waves up to 30 metres.
Wow.
It would have leaned, but no more than about 30 degrees. And they've given a very impressive endorsement of that proportion.
Okay.
So the length is 6 times the width.
Yeah.
The breadth, or the beam, is 5 to 3. And they have been found to be just ideal for that purpose.
Okay. And what about lengthways? Are the proportions about right? Because I can imagine a big boat like this going with a wave under the bow and the stern, the middle sort of cracking. Is that a possibility with a boat this size? Or?
Well, let's remember that this is a timber boat.
Yes.
If it was a steel boat, it could be a lot longer. Given the kind of waves that storm would have generated, if that was much longer, there would have been too much of the boat unsupported by water, and it could easily have broken its back.
Okay, so it had to be shorter.
That 6 to 1 was ideal for the waves and side waves. If they had made that quite a bit shorter, the opposite result, coming up and down a wave, it could have just buried its nose and kept.
Pitch pole, yeah.
Pitch pole.
Wow. Okay, so it's like Goldilocks's porridge. It is just right.
It's just right.
Yeah.
It's just right.
Wow. Well, that's incredible, Noel. We're going to take a short break now, but we'll be back in just a minute to ask Noel more about his ark and his ministry.
Planning your future can be a daunting task. What you want to do, who you want to be, and the road ahead can often be unpredictable. No one really knows what the future holds. That's just part of what makes it all so amazing. And that's why a great education matters. Because it doesn't just help you get a great job. It helps you prepare for what life can throw at you and live a great life. Avondale. It's education designed for life.
The media targets our girls with destructive messages. But is there an alternative? Yes, it's Gigi. Gigi is a great new magazine for teenage girls that uplifts good Christian values. Finally, a way to pass on our values in a way the teenage girls in our life will love. So give a subscription to a teenage girl you love today. Visit gigimagazine.com.au. That's gigimagazine.com.au.
Hi, welcome back. Well, I'm here with Noel Deed, model boat builder extraordinaire, and your incredible ark models, Noel. And look, this is a real labour of love. Goodness me. I'm all thumbs, you know, so when I look at this sort of thing, I'm in awe, I have to admit. Now, a lot of people, when they think about this, when they read the story of Noah's Ark, they say there are so many animals in the world, and Noah's Ark is just, you know, a limited size. Realistically, even with all the decks, could you really fit enough animals in to sort of repopulate the earth?
That's a good question, Kent. If we go back to the Bible reference, it talks about male and female of each kind, not each species. And as an illustration, if you take dogs, there would have been a male and female dog.
Okay.
Look how many breeds of dogs you've got today, the species.
Yeah.
And you've got this adaptation and interbreeding. And if you follow that principle, go back to the kinds, there was a man, a geologist, biologist, who did a study of this, John Woodmarope, and he determined that there would have been about 8,000 genera, or 16,000 animals, creatures. Would have been just a few more because the clean ones, there were 7 and not 2.
7 pairs, wasn't it? Or
7 number.
Well, 7, okay.
And the birds, there were 7 of those. He also determined that about 11% of the total number of animals would have been no bigger than a sheep.
Okay.
And therefore
Which is
you
true.
could
We
have
even don't have that many large animals today,
a lot of smaller cages. We think of the elephants and the rhinos and the hippos, but there's not a lot of the really big ones.
So they would have needed to have, I mean, a species is pretty much what you need today to interbreed. There aren't many species that will interbreed, but maybe a genus. Yeah, I mean, it's not the way things are now, but they would have had to have been to interbreed and specialise in order to come up with all the species today. Is that what it comes down to?
Well, following the flood, it's thought that there would have been a lot of, almost an explosion of species.
Yeah.
When the animals were to go and multiply and fill the earth, and almost an acceleration of species and breeding and so forth.
The other thing I've also wondered is if they'd had baby animals on the ark rather than full grown, they also would have taken up less room.
Well, it's thought that you wouldn't take the biggest elephant or the old hippo.
Yeah.
It would be virtually the equivalent of a healthy teen animal, so it would have been smaller and healthy.
Okay.
So that would have saved a bit of space too.
So walk us through some of these decks here, Noel, and what had to fit in there.
Okay, we remember that the instructions to build the ark, there were 3 levels. So you've got your 3 levels. These are like a mezzanine to accommodate the much smaller animals.
Okay.
And it's thought that the heavier, larger ones would have been on the bottom.
Well, that'd make sense, yeah.
And as you go up, the smaller ones, and then the very tiny ones up the top.
Sorry, giraffes, you don't get to stick your heads out the top of the ark. Yeah, okay.
Well, they can put their heads up there.
Wow, okay. And what about lighting and airflow and that sort of thing?
That's an interesting question. We have a window right along the top which would have allowed a certain amount of light in and would allow for air circulation. That centre section is open so that you've got the possibility of ventilation and light coming through. But it's also generally thought that within the ark itself there wouldn't have been a lot of light. In fact, you would tend to get a degree of darkness down here.
Sort of a permanent evening, yeah.
That's right. And animals in a darkened situation tend to sleep.
They do, yes. They
and
hibernate.
If you have a lot of darkness, they hibernate.
Yeah, okay.
And it's thought that hibernation would have made the journey much more simplified for Noah.
And they would have eaten less, of course.
So they wouldn't have to feed them every day. They may sleep for 2 or 3 weeks and then have another feed. They don't have big pens, so they're not running and using up energy. And then the outflow of that is that if they don't eat very much, they're not going to poo as much.
Sure, yeah.
And that other problem of cleaning the pens, it's not nearly the problem that some people think. And then when they do, the principle of recycling, you've got your dung beetles and your worms and so forth. In a cow paddock, you see that at work. And the same principle, I'm sure, would have been operating.
So a lot of work for 2 dung beetles and 2 worms, though, Noel. They would have had to have smuggled a few extra on, I reckon.
They might have had a lot more.
They would have had to. Wow. Yeah, some of the logistics are interesting. So when you present these details to people, when they see the models, what sort of response do you get?
They immediately start to realise that Noah's Ark was feasible. And instead of saying, well, it was a cartoon fairy story, couldn't have happened, they're now saying, oh.
Yeah, not that all their questions are answered necessarily, but...
No.
Yeah.
But it sets them thinking.
Yeah.
And they begin to then accommodate that this was a real situation. And of course that flows on. Okay, so the Genesis account, maybe that's true.
Yeah. So the book of Genesis, and then I guess the Bible overall, it goes to the reliability of the Bible. Because something like Noah's Ark is a sticking point for some people, isn't it?
It is.
You say, well, you know, the Bible looks historical, but when I look at a story like Noah's Ark, goodness.
Well, the book of Genesis is often relegated to myths and fairy stories. But if the Ark is true, if the flood really happened, then the Genesis book comes back into real history.
Yeah.
And you've got the beginnings of everything in Genesis that flows through to the rest of the Bible. So the question becomes a very vital one.
Wow. And I guess one that you've become a lot more adept at answering since you started this.
Well, I've become fully convinced because of all the research that I've done.
Oh, it's built your faith as well?
It has.
Wow.
Certainly has.
Hey, thanks so much, Noel, for going to all the effort
Do you want to see the light?
Oh, yeah. Switch the light on for us. There you go, lighting. Now, they didn't have LEDs in the real Ark, did they?
Well, we don't know.
Hey, Noel, thanks so much. I really appreciate your time and for going to all the effort of bringing all this stuff in. Thank you for coming in and for your ministry.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity.
We'll be back in a minute.
Thousands of years ago, a series of ancient prophecies were disguised within a system of mysterious symbols. For centuries, these remarkable predictions have been sealed to the world until now. Check out our new Secrets of Prophecy online course today in 24 beautifully illustrated free studies at www.itiswrittenoceania.tv or call 1300 300 389 for your free copy today.
Every week, It Is Written is available to millions of free-to-air viewers throughout Australia, New Zealand, New Guinea and the Pacific. It Is Written's Gary Kent regularly takes viewers to the far corners of the globe to report on new evidence and discoveries that confirm the Bible and Christian beliefs. It Is Written also provides medical care to remote Pacific Island communities. Join Gary Kent each week for It Is Written. See television guides and the It Is Written website for broadcast times. It Is Written with Gary Kent. It really is television that changes lives.
Welcome back. Sibel, what an interesting hobby Noel has.
And what an amazing way to share the Bible with people of all ages.
Yeah, I'm just a little bit afraid of how many paddle pops he had to eat to get that boat built.
Whatever floats his boat, Jared.
Oh, well, indeed. It's been fun, but that's all we have time for.
Remember, you can keep in touch via Twitter or drop us an email at letters@infocus.org.au.
Thanks so much for watching. We hope you've enjoyed Record in Focus. Bye for now.
And God bless.